Hello, puppies and kittens, and welcome back to another episode of Blasphemer's Bible. We are into Exodus 4, and I wanted to bring up something that I missed in the last episode. There was a comment about how all of the Egyptians were going to borrow jewelry and things of value so they could flee the country and never come back. I'm interested in that in the use of the word borrow when really what you mean is steal.
Oh, the Jews are going to borrow from the Egyptians? Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, we
And
did
the other
touch on that.
aspect of it is it doesn't sound like quite the situation we're made out to think that it is. I mean, how do you imagine slaves borrowing vehicles? Let me borrow your wagon, your donkeys, and your jewelry.
Yeah.
Well, I would say that the Hebrew word that is used is sha'ala, which does mean to borrow.
Yeah,
It wasn't,
ask.
didn't we mention last time that there was a legal suit at one point brought by Egypt saying, hey, you say you borrowed all this stuff from us. We would like it back now. Thank you. Which is one case of mythology biting someone in the ass. But I
we charge interest, bitch.
Yeah. It's been a lot
the
of
story
years.
itself. The story itself is like a legend. I think it's supposed to be like Alexander the Great conquered them both, and they were like, give us money for the stuff that you took, and then the Jews were like, well, pay us wages. Here's the calculation, and then they were like, okay, we retract our initial request.
Yeah,
All
fair
right.
enough.
Anybody else got an opening comment?
Well, similar to the borrowing, I would like to point out that the initial offer made is not let my people go into freedom because slavery is bad, but let us run off into the desert for 3 days to have a special ritual and we'll totes be back for real.
Special ritual, huh?
Well, considering the presence and importance of a staff in this chapter, we can only speculate.
I'm just saying that the desert moon at night is beautiful.
I mean that can be looked in the way of like give him a chance to like give permission for something not as drastic. Like if you go up and ask him, let us go completely, of course he's going to say no. But here, like give something, just 3 days in the desert. Maybe he'll say yes, but he didn't.
And then you can
say
make
yes
a run
even
for
to
it.
that. Yeah.
And the premise is always you're going to make a run for it, but yeah.
First comment to come in, Kicker White Lion offers 50 Czech kroner and says, I've caught the bane of men, the common cold. When it's over, I'll come back and tell you what happens after death. Wait for the dawn of the fifth day.
Poor man.
So you'll be calling us with cell phone, or you're going to be...
Get a Ouija board.
He's going to be coming... Yeah. Oh.
I have another comment just about that. Jason says, was just watching the interview with the mighty chicken. Really loving it.
Thanks, Guy. Appreciate that.
So, who's reading today?
I would like to read, and I want Aaron to read the voice of God.
Yay!
Oh, all right.
Okay. I'm reading.
Like, yes, dear.
I'm reading in KJV. Aaron, reading KJV.
You should read verses 1 to 10.
Okay, yeah, she's right. I should get in the same version.
Okay.
Get in KJV, where everything's really weird, dude.
1 to 9, maybe.
Yeah,
1 to
it
9?
does have a certain gravitas.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
Are we ready?
I think. Yep, we are.
And Moses answered and said, but behold, they will not believe me. Are we in chapter 4? Okay, yes.
Yep.
Okay. Nor hearken unto my voice, for they will say, the Lord hath not appeared unto thee. And the Lord said unto him,
I am not in the right version. I'm saying this says Exodus. Hold on a second. Okay, now it's updated. All right. And the Lord saith unto him, what is in thine hand?
And he said, a rod.
A rod.
You're gonna go blind if you keep doing that.
I know. And he said
Cast it on the ground.
that you keep going because I still got talking. Oh no.
No,
it is-
it's
is-
not. It's
And,
not.
and he
Yeah,
cast it
tell
on
you.
the ground, and it became a serpent, and Moses fled before it. And Lord said unto Moses, Put forth
Put
thine
forth
hand.
thine hand and take it by the tail, and put forth his hand. Sorry, go ahead.
And he put
Go ahead.
forth. I'm messing it up more. And he
Yeah,
put
we need
forth,
to do rehearsals before we do this on
I
stage.
think
Eddie-
so. Yes.
and he put forth his hand
Okay.
and caught it, and it became a rod in his hand, that they may believe the Lord God of their fathers, the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob hath appeared unto thee. And the Lord said furthermore unto him,
Put now thine hand into thy bosom, with your other
Eh.
hand on your rod.
and
Oh
he,
my.
and he put his hand into his bosom, and he took it out, and behold, his hand was leprous as snow. And he said,
Put thine hand into thy bosom again.
and he put his hand into his bosom again, and
Do it
plucked it
again,
out
do
of
it
his
again.
bosom. And behold, it was turned again as his other flesh.
Okay.
And we're not
Wait,
at 10.
let- no. We need
And
to-
it shall come to pass if they. Oh, that's you, sweetie.
And it shall come to pass, if they will not believe thee, neither hearken to the voice of the first sign, that they will believe the voice of the latter sign.
And you still read.
You still read.
And
Yeah.
it shall come to pass, if they will not believe also these two signs, neither hearken unto thy voice, that thou shalt take of the water of the river, and pour it upon the dry land. And the water which thou takest out of the river shall become blood upon the dry land.
And Moses said unto the Lord,
I think we should.
That's
Stop there.
stop
Okay, I just want to get the order of operations correctly. So
I was
Moses,
just thinking that Tomer was going to read the words of Moses, because she says, and Moses says unto the Lord, and then Tomer says,
God, what does
Oh,
God
sorry.
do with his
It-
patience?
It goes.
you know,
Uh,
I have to get the order of operations here. So he goes up into the mountains on his own after spending all day with the sheep, encounters a burning bush, holds his stiff rod, then throws it down and it becomes all floppy. His hand is covered in light and he hears voices. And it becomes stiff again in his hand.
Sounds like a night in Vegas. What are you talking about?
This is a very specific fetish.
what happens in the desert stays in the desert.
Apparently,
Yeah, exactly.
not in this
Yeah.
instance.
Okay.
but it becomes a cobra.
Sometimes for 40
Look, it's a
years.
spitting cobra.
So
Well,
first on verse 3, it became a snake. So according to Exodus Rabbah 3:12, Moses had followed the example of the serpent in Genesis, who had spoken slanderously of God, and so made the staff into a serpent, as if to say, "You have done the thing that this serpent did."
Yeah,
Moses spoke slanderously of God?
there is something interesting about that, right? Because in this case it's being used to prove the divinity and power of God. And in the Genesis story, I mean, that's not how the snake was used. So it is very interesting that connection is made. The more specific connection, I think, would be the one later where we get the actual magicians of Pharaoh's court doing the same kind of thing, where they're turning their staffs into snakes. But then, spoiler alert, sorry, Moses's snake eats the other snakes. So there's
His is bigger. It's
Yeah,
a
his
snake
is-
measuring contest.
it is, isn't
Yeah, I
it?
think.
World's
Yeah, I
first
think he's
horribles.
comparing Moses to a snake because, like the snake, he spoke slanderously. But in this case, he spoke slanderously about Israel because
Yeah.
he said they won't believe me.
And in
Why
the
are you
process,
judging them that they won't believe you?
Yeah, in the process though, they're slandering snakes in general. Like, you're like a snake. What's wrong with snakes?
I think people living in
So-
the desert might have something against snakes.
Yeah,
Moses
That's
is going to
true.
go before
That's
Pharaoh,
true.
and he needs some way to verify that the voices in his head aren't just in his head. So God shows him how to do two magic tricks that other magicians already know how to do.
Hmm.
So it's kind of like where he says, "Hey Moses, watch me pull a rabbit out of my hat." It's kind of the
Again.
same thing that he's arming Moses with. I mean, Moses doesn't get the power of levitation. He doesn't get to shoot fireballs from his hands. He
Hey,
and
Matt
God
Dillahunty
doesn't
can
show up.
levitate.
God doesn't show up with him. God doesn't walk into the room or float into the room or float Moses into the room and speak separate from Moses. None of that. Instead, they just send a crazy person, because it's always that way. The prophet is always the crazy person who hears the voices in his head and then does some trick like splitting the moon in half. And then everybody can say, well, the moon's not split in half. Well, it's good, not anymore.
That's
You
in
weren't
a
looking.
different.
I got better.
That's in a different book.
I would
I think
also
there's some
add,
symbolism here that we shouldn't overlook. You can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think this is the first time a rod is introduced in the Bible.
As an
I think it
object of
symbolizes
power?
I think it symbolizes protection.
There is actually a history in the Bible with
no,
the rod as an
no, wait.
object of power with David and everything.
Yeah, correct me if I'm wrong.
But before
But there's something that really, I think it was significant to me here because I think what's being represented, you have the snake that's a symbol of the adversary, and then turning him back into the rod. It just shows God's in control. And one thing I run into a lot when I'm talking to atheists, they bring up the hardening of Pharaoh's heart a lot, how God was the one that did it. You
It's
know?
not.
Both sides of the
see,
And I
So-
think,
this is
I know we're
not
jumping
the
ahead.
first- This is not the first verse. You also have in Genesis 38:18.
You have well, if we're talking about rods and staffs and stuff, I feel like it would have been mentioned before because we were talking
well,
about
Tomer just said 38:18,
you said
which is
third.
before this.
Oh, you said
Genesis
30.
38:18.
Your
30,
seal and
18,
cord on
okay.
the staff
I
of your
misread.
hand was
I said
given as a
38,
pledge by Judah to
yeah.
Tamar.
Oh, that's right, Tamar.
Yeah.
Although
But-
that
but-
was less about the staff itself and more about it, it was a
Mm.
signification. It was still a signification of power
Power.
and position and his personal status.
I mean, this is the whole thing of leading the people kind of thing, because the very common metaphor that's used is being a shepherd, right? And
Mhm.
shepherds have staves, so it would just make sense to have one. This would be something that would have been pretty common.
But it does seem to be that staffs as objects and symbols of power are definitely a theme. As we've noticed, are snakes and bulls. I honestly think this points to the polytheistic origins of the Jewish religion, is their conflicted relationship with serpents, the conflicted relationship with bulls. You clearly have an attempt to both preserve and justify certain traditions that may have still been in existence at the time of whatever portion being written, but to still fold it into the ultimate goal of the henotheistic and then monotheistic rendition of God. But yeah, again, the shepherd angle and promoting the lifestyle of herdsmen over that of
In some cultures too, snakes
farmers.
are not thought of as negative. They're worshipped, like in Egyptian culture. Well, no, that one is Apophis is trying to swallow the sun. Huh.
I mean, we'll see
there's
later
another
on.
snake god. That's
Because
good.
I think as Isaac pointed out, in the ancient world, snakes would have been pretty lethal. So there's a good reason to be afraid of them, especially before we got any handle on snake handling in that part of the region.
Anti-venom.
They also represented massive amounts of power and control, which is why the snake was used as an
Power.
idol for almost everything. The
Yeah.
snake head, for example, on the top of the pharaoh's.
Yes, the Uraeus.
Yeah.
But
Right,
ironically
thank you.
healing too.
Sure, absolutely.
think-
Yeah, I
I think
mean,
I spoke last week
we'll
about
see-
that, if I recall, that they were actually deified in certain
Yeah.
Mhm.
I
old cultures
spoke
too.
previously that there was the snake goddess Ganenutet.
Mhm.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Yeah.
then
We'll see later on in Exodus that
there were like
the
regional snake goddesses too. But yeah, sorry.
Yeah,
Go ahead.
in Egypt, though, there were two snake gods that were good. I think. Oh, someone in the comments says Wadjet, and there's Nehebekow.
There's an
So
ancient legend in Australia about the great snake that actually carved through. I can't remember the name of it. That made all the rivers in Australia and left eggs in place, and that's what the giant, huge rocks are called, devil's marbles. I actually got a chance to go there myself years ago, and it was
Cool.
awesome. And I got a chance to hear local legends of how there was a great, of course, great flood, because there's always a great flood story. But then the snake wept all the way through, carved everything, but left its children for the future to be able to grow. But then there was something about how the eggs dried up and turned to stone, which is why they're
Well,
there
so
today.
that's interesting because
That's
in
fun.
China,
I could be
they also
wrong,
have
but
a
yeah.
legend about a great
Yeah.
flood that is then it
Mhm.
resolved by the Naga goddess Nuhua. Now she is a Naga, so her body is that of a snake, and so she had to make all of these rivers and everything. So if you're saying that happened in China and that this other story exists in Australia, and they're telling the same story,
Flood myth.
that
Yeah.
proves
think-
there was a giant snake that made all our rivers.
And the
Obviously,
flood
I think the same
was a really
patterns.
cool
I think
place,
the
though.
same thing is through the Bible too. That's my personal opinion.
Oh,
So
there's
we
definitely
got a story. We got a story that's supposed to take part in the 13th century BC, where that's what commonly understood to be, and so the guy gets a stick because that's as far as imaginations went. Why couldn't he get a laser blaster, or
Yeah.
at least
This
God
rod was
could have
really
given him
really cool, Aaron.
That
It
would
was
be
just
a
really
God
cool.
could have given him a boomstick like in Evil Dead 3.
There are no Easter eggs in the Bible.
But I think
or like an E-17 blaster. Come on, guys, let's get real here.
This-
It was a
this
long time ago in a
theme-
galaxy far, far away, right? Anyway,
I would have been far more impressed if he had come up with a lightsaber, but it was
Yeah.
not to be.
it was a
And the
it
focus-
changed into a serpent and then back into a rod. That's pretty cool, I
Yeah.
think.
Yeah, it would be.
But the
pretty cool if
symbolism
other
that God is
magicians-
in control starts here, I
Yeah,
think.
but
Yeah.
since the
And-
other magicians already know that, and God didn't know that the other magicians already know that.
Yeah, they do. In the story,
Well,
they
and-
switch to trick.
Let's face it, Penn and Teller could do more impressive tricks than he's claiming right now.
So
Oh,
I
yeah.
do want to point something out here. So the importance of magic being included here, like this is obviously magic, and he's giving Moses the ability to perform magic. He is giving him that magic power, and the importance of that is that in ancient Egypt there were literally magic schools. People would train for magic, and there were there's a whole book on ancient Egyptian magic that I was reading the other day that talks about the many ways that they perform magic, right? Their worldview and stuff. And the thing is, usually it requires a good amount of training, but if he were able to walk in and his magic was somehow better than the magic of the people who were doing it for so long, then obviously he's got something to it. So that it would be the first sign. Well, I guess in this case it's not a sign.
Yeah,
but
when we get
But-
when we
well-
get to the plagues,
I
we'll see the
when he
difference
goes
between
before
magic.
when he goes before the when Pharaoh's emissaries do the same thing, did the snakes turn back into rods?
Well, no, because
No,
Moses
do they-
needs them,
Moses
but
needs
they
them.
presumably could go the other way. So what you're saying, Lawrence, just to be clear,
I've seen that on stage in Las Vegas. I'm not even kidding. I've
Yes.
seen the
No
rod
doubt.
into a snake. Yeah, that's.
But
they
but the
vice
did-
difference
versa.
the difference is they turned back though, right?
No,
but
so
what
difference-
you're
the
saying,
difference-
he got
in
rid
We'll
of
this
get to
case.
it.
he got
If you
Okay.
rid of
go
it.
to-
We'll get to that.
Yeah.
the
we'll get to it.
Egyptian
Let's wait
magicians
till we
are
get to it.
sorcerers who study their craft, and Moses is a warlock whose patron is Yahweh.
His magic is stronger.
I
than
don't want to
your magic.
digress
That's
too
the
much here, but I
main
just want to
difference.
say this. Watch Penn and Teller's Fool Us, and you're going to see all sorts of amazing magicians do some amazing things. And they've already done, I think, I could be wrong about this, but almost every single miracle that ever was done in the Bible has been performed on
I
stage.
watched Penn and Teller turn water into wine.
Yeah, I've
Was it
seen that
good?
trick too. That would be delicious.
You
The
just,
wine was good
you just
quality.
have a special jug with
wine.
different chambers for the wine and the water, and you pour a different way to get the wine and
Yeah,
pour the
Right.
water.
These
That's
are
why
these are old
Dionysus was
street
better.
tricks.
Dionysus didn't just have a jug with a special secret chamber in it. Dionysus made the springs of the earth bring forth wine. That's a much better trick.
yeah,
That's
let's
one
wait.
Penn and Teller couldn't do.
Yeah, let's wait until,
That's-
until the New Testament.
sure that
talks
they're
about
working
water
on it.
wine. But yeah, there's actually a fun story about that wedding at Cana thing, right? Where there's some scholarship or some scholars suggest that was like a marketing campaign. Like it's just pretty funny once we get there. So
Maybe
Okay,
they
let me
had
read a couple
Christians
more
and
chat.
toddlers back then too.
I have a
Couple more
request, Darn. I'd like to read as Moses, since we don't have anyone reading as Moses right now, and I have a reason for it, if that's all right, just for a little bit.
Okay.
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 So let me read a couple comments though. Xantham Gum says the name Moses in Egyptian is moon, and Ayaya in Egyptian is moon god. So is there a connection with the Judaic god and moon god, since Judaics start the day at sunset?
It's
No.
not. No, I mean the
No.
name is not Egyptian for moon. I already talked about this previously.
yeah,
It's probably a combination between child and water, but no, there is no connection between Moses and moon.
yeah.
Yeah, and I think most cultures counted days from sunset to sunset, not from midnight. I think that is a much later idea.
All right, and then Matt White says, further regarding testes to testimony, testament, testify, etc. This makes Old and New Testaments and the Book of Mormon old balls, new balls, and blue balls.
I think we already checked
That's
that.
so
didn't we?
weird doing with
The
that one.
cover of the Book of Mormon is also blue, so
There
he's
you
got a
go.
point.
Oh.
I think we already checked that. I think there's the testimony, testament, testify comes from like a Latin or Greek word that means like a witness, and testes is different or something like that.
And then Minute Rice offers $6.66 and says, your coverage of the After School Satan Club inspired me to join the Satanic Temple. Membership cards in the mail. Hail Satan. Which reminds me, right after this show today, I'm going to a satanic gathering.
Very cool.
Then
Oh,
Mr.
yeah,
McCrinnon-
in my neighborhood.
Have a hell of a day.
That's wrong.
Mr. Crinnon,
yeah.
says,
Good on you,
P-Town
P-Town.
symbolizes. Are you saying you're beginning to embrace Moses as an allegorical myth?
I mean, there is a lot of comparison with other myths, as you pointed out. The mythical elements are in the Bible, just as they're in the other things we talked about, other myths from all around the world. There's common human themes.
But I think that one was directed at P-Town.
It is.
Oh, sorry, I stopped listening for a second. What?
So good. Yeah,
That's fine.
so the comment
All I heard
is-
was blue balls. Or was I
That's
reading
fair.
something?
That's fair, yeah. So
Wow.
the comment was symbolizes. Are you saying you're beginning to embrace Moses as an allegorical myth?
No,
Yeah,
No,
he's talking about
definitely
the
not.
Staff as
he
a
was a real
symbol.
dude with a real staff, baby.
How do you,
Right.
well, I guess we'll discover that as we move on. But I mean, we know that a lot of the laws and edicts from Exodus 20 to 24 and all that, some of them were lifted right out of
Hammurabi.
Hammurabi, who was centuries earlier, and then some of the rest were already pre-existing laws that we know that too, so that
I wanna
they
point out-
can't be attributed.
I
It
wanna
can't
point
be
out
attributed to the
parallel.
Moses character. His parting of the Red Sea, for example, that is a less interesting retelling of the story of Jajamunk and Senefru from like 1,000 years earlier from the same place.
Was that the one with the slave girl who lost the topless slave girl who lost her earring and was so upset about it?
Exactly.
I do wanna point out that-
I'm not well versed in Egyptology, but the Bible has demonstrated itself divine to me in other ways, so that's why I have that presupposition.
I
but
think the Bible
but-
has demonstrated itself to be a
Even if
haphazard
that were
compilation of
true.
other people's stories.
I'm looking.
It wouldn't
I do
make
wanna
it
point
not
out-
a myth.
Hold on,
Yeah.
Arn. I do want to be fair. So in the same sense that I actually love this example. In the same sense that West Side Story is a modern retelling of Romeo and Juliet, the Bible would be their modern retelling of all those other stories. So it's not like plagiarism. It's literally like we are telling the
Tropes.
same motifs to get a different point across.
Riff on a theme.
Yeah.
If it wasn't clear, that's the same way that I interpret it, because I mean, there are significant differences between the Snefru and Judgment and all. It's just the earlier story from the Westcar Papyrus is just funnier than the parting of the Red Sea thing.
And Arn loves to
Kind of
tell
like how
stripper
Shakespeare is
stories too.
funnier.
I'm going on. I'm presupposing that I have the Romeo and Juliet.
We
I'll
don't.
admit that, and I'm looking
evidence
forward to
would
learning more.
suggest Not.
Yeah,
Well,
look into
that's all-
Egyptian
you're here.
mythology. It's really interesting. Like, and there's so much of it.
Oh,
and
yeah.
there's
Oh,
lots
yeah.
of interesting things you come across, and it's like, oh, we have
I
that
love
in
Egyptology.
Judaism.
So
and
what's
that's some
what's interesting
That's yeah.
is
Well,
later.
I mean, like, yeah.
Go ahead, Isaac.
You
Yeah,
go.
sorry.
No.
So
Sorry, I thought you were
later,
asking me a
later
question.
today,
So
later today, I will be in the Discord, and I'll be streaming research on Egyptology. But it will be
Fun.
Gonna be there.
I will
be
be-
there. That's awesome.
I'll be going more into the idea of the Ka, because that's what I think. Tomer was definitely there. Isaac was there
Yep.
when we were reading about the royal Ka, and how it could have been transferred from pharaoh to pharaoh, and then when there was a new pharaoh that wasn't part of the genetic lineage, they had to make a divine legitimation story. So it's really interesting stuff. But I am currently reading through quite a few texts to actually get that their understanding of the soul, because it's in 3 parts, but it could maybe that's just for the elite.
there's
I
more
don't know
as
yet.
well.
There's something, there's a lot of really interesting stuff there. So
I'm going to read in a couple more chats. I've got somebody that the pronunciation may be in the form of initials SJL, possibly. I don't know. Or it could be ASL. I don't know. Says, if the snake from the Garden of Eden was the devil, maybe this trick really came from Satan. Yeah, but it wasn't. And it couldn't have in the context of the story, because this is God saying, here's my magic staff. When you twist it like this, or turn this button, or throw it down, then it turns into a snake. Isn't that cool? Now shake it out once and it becomes rigid again, just like they did on the stage show.
Okay.
And then Frederick Agerbo says, the Danish comedian and magician Rune Klan did make a comedy/magic show called The Bible, where he performed many of the miracles of the Bible and summarized it.
Sounds
And
fun.
then Ivory Darkness says, thanks, Lawrence. Now I'm wondering who's the sharks and who's the jets in Exodus.
On
I
that
was-
theme,
That's pretty good. That's pretty good.
that's West Side Story, right? It's a retelling of Romeo and Juliet. But on that theme, a commenter named Crown House says Romeo and Juliet is a reworking of the story of Pyramus and Thisbe from Ovid's Metamorphosis.
Very good.
So not the original Romeo and Juliet either.
And Shakespeare wasn't the only one to use that story. That story had been going for quite a while. And I learned the role of Romeo, oddly enough, in a Bellini opera, because, countertenors and mezzos and all that, witches, bitches, and boys. But yeah, it was a common story, and star-crossed lovers are very interesting. And actually, I was also in a West Side Story production many, many, many years ago, and a jet and a shark did hook up backstage. They were just both guys.
the
Oh my.
Metamorphosis, though, Ovid's Metamorphosis. So there's a whole lot of Greek and Roman literature that we praise now, but I think is hugely overrated. Like the Iliad fucking sucks, but but Metamorphosis is actually really good. I actually really like Metamorphosis. But in the Iliad, I'm really he's gonna go on this killing spree and then he doesn't kill Hector's dad. No, just kill his dad too. Fucking finish it, man. And no, they kiss and make up, and oh my god, it's
I
So
could talk
Mr.
to you about
McCrennan
that
offers
sometime
a-
if you want.
Mr. Crennan, there we go, I wasn't asking if you've abandoned your faith. I assume not, but there are a host of believers who believe it's a divinely inspired myth with a spiritual Moses summit of the patriarchs. So
I can see
we
that.
just leave that there.
Okay.
Yeah.
Like C.S.
I think it's
Lewis.
dangerous. I think it's dangerous to start thinking that well, okay, I'm speaking from a Christian perspective. Once you start to think that things are just meaningful and not literal, I think that's you're just going to be on a fast track to becoming an atheist.
Well, you're
C.S.
Yeah,
saying
Lewis.
you are.
You're using
Wait,
critical
Yeah.
thinking, is what you're saying.
C.S. Lewis was a Christian, and he believed the Old Testament was not literal, and that it was just God using the stories of the ancient Hebrews to fulfill his prophecy about Jesus.
I'll have
Yeah,
to.
I've spoken
I'll
with a
have to
number
look
of
into
Christians.
that with
I've
about
spoken with a
B.S.
number of
Lewis.
Christians with scientific training who have completely rejected the Exodus, the story of the flood, the Adam and Eve, all of that. They know that none of that is possible, that none of that happened for sure. They still believe in Jesus, and they think that these other stories had symbolic meaning, that they were obviously, that Adam and Eve were just metaphorical. That's all that can be. There's no way to intelligently, literally interpret that. The eat of the fruit of the tree of knowledge of good and evil, or eat of the fruit of the tree of life. This is a choice. This is and this is the results of the choice.
metaphysical choice.
It has these are not trees. You can't cut these down and throw them in the fire. This is entirely metaphor. There's no other way to read that, and the only way that the story has meaning is if it is a metaphor.
I would like to point out also, P-Town, that I frequently point out to Christians that the Catholic Church has for a very long time accepted evolution and deep time, and that the early stories in the Old Testament, if not necessarily all the king's lists and everything, are in fact metaphorical. And I realize that there's a lot of difference between Protestants and Catholics. Rivers of blood have been shed on the differences. But one thing I do point out, that whatever else you can say about Catholics, and I've had many a criticism of them in my time, one thing you cannot say is that they are some airy-fairy, hippy-dippy, liberal, just however the spirit moves you kind of Christian denominations. This is not the Unitarian Universalists, okay? If anything, they're too conservative, and they're still able to accept that as an entire massive structure. So it's not.
These people are an organized crime syndicate that just take them
Yeah, I
seriously.
But they do take
I
religion
know from
seriously.
firsthand experience there.
There is an author that I would recommend to you, P-Town. Look up Mark S. Smith. You can look up a good chunk of his books, like The Origins of Biblical Monotheism is really good. I think he did a book on Genesis 1. It's called A Priestly Vision in Genesis 1, and he does really good work, and he's a devout Christian, and he explains all this stuff very well. It is kind of dense at times. That is true. I will warn you there. It is pretty dense, but with just a few Google searches, you'll understand what he, for certain terms, you'll understand what he's talking about, and he makes very good arguments. I really recommend him.
So then Trevor and Wright says, why any group of people or nation believe they can obtain literal history from the Bible's lineages, wouldn't that lead to propaganda?
That's exactly what it
that's
is.
the point.
I mean,
Exactly what it
Egypt
is.
had propaganda. The Babylonians had propaganda. Everyone has propaganda.
Yeah, the Jews had propaganda too. We're not shocked. They're not
absolutely.
especially.
Atheist.
No.
Okay,
we did not
so
have propaganda.
Tomer,
I do
Tomer,
have
did you
commentary.
finish the commentary on the first 9
I didn't
verses that we
finish.
did?
No, I didn't. I
Oh,
waited for
sorry.
all of you to
Let's
finish.
finish that.
I'll make it quick. So
Okay.
take it by the tail. So Amos Chacham writes, it is practiced by those who have snakes to hold them in their heads and necks so that they won't bite. Moses, however, was commanded to hold the tail of the snake, and so to make it more miraculous.
Fair enough.
That
And-
because cobra handlers also hold their cobras by the tail.
Is this the Talmud, Tomer?
No, that's Amos Chacham. He is a biblical scholar.
Okay.
And verse 6, the skin was leprous. So according to Exodus Rabbah 3:13, this was also a sign that Moses had made a slanderous statement in verse 1, because according to Numbers 12 verses 1 to 10, the punishment for slander is leprosy.
Well, to be clear though, here, so it's not leprosy proper. This is a skin condition, some unknown skin condition that
Yeah.
pops up throughout the Bible.
Yeah.
But it's not leprosy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
It becomes blanched like snow is the translation that's used here.
Leprosy is actually a nerve
It's-
condition that stops you from feeling pain, and then you injure yourself because you don't realize. So yeah,
in Hebrew, it's
Yeah, I don't know
called
why
sarat.
it's I don't know why it's translated to
was
leprosy.
used for a lot of skin conditions at that time. The term, like it was sort of a catch-all because they didn't,
Yeah,
Yeah.
let's also
And-
keep this story in mind when we get to Miriam.
And finally,
we-
on verse 9, the water you take from the river will become blood. So Rashi and Ibn Ezra wrote that this is a hint for the first plague, where the waters of the Nile turned into blood. And Sforno comments that in this sign, a thing which is simple, water, becomes complex, blood, which is a greater change than curing leprosy. That's it.
Yeah, and also about the attacking the gods of Egypt because they worship the Nile.
Yeah.
Okay, that's it from me.
fair point.
Okay.
So these are little mini signs before the big signs. Is that what's going on?
God's prepping
signs for a
Moses by
different
showing
purpose.
him that he can do miracles and giving him his magic powers so that he can go talk
Yeah.
to people. Because Moses really doesn't want to go be a spokesman.
We're about to
These
get
are the
there,
signs that he can use to prove to the Israelites that he is
More like a
true
rehearsal.
messenger. Yeah, so God shows him the signs first, and then Moses goes to the people and says, "I'm coming from God," and then they say, "Who are you?" And then he kind of proves himself with these tricks, and then only after that does he then go to Pharaoh to do the actual big signs.
There's that, but when you read it in the context of the rest of the story, these first miracles with quotation marks were to show, if this story is showing the glory of God, like according to the theme of this story, that he hardens the Pharaoh's hearts to these first miracles, so now he can show them even better ones and show how magnificent the God of Israel is. It's like,
Yeah, I mean, this is all within the
making
context of Moses arguing with God. So,
But making people suffer so you can show off is the behavior of a narcissist.
Yep.
Yeah.
So Levente Gunshi, I'm sure I said that wrong, but I said P-Town basically just said that. But I don't presuppose it. If I don't presuppose it, I wouldn't be convinced of it. Well, yes, that's the unbeliever's exact point. Not having a reason to believe is a reason not to believe.
No, what I was saying was the Bible has demonstrated itself divine to me in other ways. So just because I don't have the time to go become an Egyptologist doesn't mean I can't believe in the Bible as a whole.
okay, hold on a
So
second.
by my presupposition of believing
I get where
the
you're
book
going with
is
that.
based on evidence.
Hold on a second. The Bible is this is going to be off topic, so we don't have a lot of time for it. But the Bible has shown itself to be divine to you in other ways. So for people that the Bhagavad Gita has shown itself to be divine to them, how is their experience different from yours, P-Town?
I don't know. I'm not them. I haven't read the Bhagavad Gita, so I don't know.
So can both be true? Can the Bhagavad Gita and the Bible be
Bhagavad
true?
Gita.
Yeah,
I don't know the Bhagavad Gita.
It's
Sorry.
Bhagavad Gita is a Hindu religious text.
I saw it down
About
there at
600
Value
years.
Village the other day, so I'll go
Yeah.
grab a coffee and
Got
let you know.
It is an interesting read, just in terms of a story.
is.
I actually
I-
I did compare it in a paper once to the show Supernatural. So it and the thing is, I
That's
did
pretty
really well.
good.
I did really well in that paper.
Awesome.
guys, I think we should move on
I wanna
because
see
the
that
later
book,
the
yeah.
later parts of this chapter are very, very interesting. So
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, okay.
yeah. So
Here
I
we-
just want to ask if you want to do the whole quotation stuff. Is it possible to read from a version that has quotation marks in it? because that will help
Oh, what version has
help you
quotation
figure it
marks?
out. I don't know.
I
Well,
think
I
it
was
will
on the
a lot of them
NIV.
would.
The NIV had it.
Okay,
The
NIV
NIV
has
has it.
quotation.
JPS
Okay.
also has.
I'm just going to read the narrator, and Mighty Chicken's going to read Moses. And
Yes, I'm
Scott-
gonna Star Trek this up a little bit for us because we need something fun here.
Okay,
If you don't mind.
and Arns, we're gonna read God. So I'm gonna go to the New International Version, NIV, Exodus 4.
It
Mine will be
doesn't
a little
have
bit
quite
different.
as flowery language, but oh well.
I love the flowery language.
See
Literature.
if I can do this.
Okay, we're on 10, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, wait, wait, hold on a second. We're coming up on, I wanted to get the expert's opinion on verse 13.
We'll
Because the
get to that.
grammar's
So we're
weird.
gonna
And I
read
know
it, and then we'll go
that
over it.
We'll discuss
I'm just
that.
saying the NIV doesn't have the grammar. I looked at it
Oh.
last night. Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, okay.
NIV takes it out.
Okay,
My
so
grammar might be incorrect too by what I read here because I have just the King James.
So we're going back to
God,
KJV.
no, we're
Mine-
in
Just for
NIV.
verse,
We'll
just
read
for verse
NIV, but
13,
we'll
I
also
recommend it.
review King James Version.
Yeah,
We'll
just
go
for
to
verse
13
13.
and then yeah. Okay. So verse 10. Moses said to the Lord,
Oh my Lord, I am not eloquent, either here or therefore, or since thou art spoken to the servant, but I am lowly of speech and of tongue.
the Lord said to him,
Who gave human beings their mouths? Who makes them deaf or mute? Who gives them sight or makes them blind? Is it not I, the Lord? Now go. I will help you speak, and I will teach you what to say.
but Moses said,
Oh my Lord, send, I pray, some other person.
then the Lord's anger burned against Moses, and he said,
What about your brother Aaron, the Levite? I know he can speak well. He is already on his way to meet you, and he will be glad to see you. You shall speak to him and put words in his mouth. I will help both of you speak and will teach you what to do. He will speak to the people for you, and it will be as if it was your mouth, and as if you were God to him. But take this staff in your hand so you can perform the signs with it.
Then Moses went back to Jethro, his father-in-law, and said to him,
Let me go back, I pray, my kinsmen in Egypt, and see whether that they are still alive.
Jethro said,
Are you
in
Yes.
NIV,
Bill Shatner?
I was first George Takei, now I'm Bill Shatner.
Okay.
I decided to try
Okay,
to
just
Shatner.
be a hura next.
Should we stop?
Okay.
Should,
I will
should we
not
do
do
10
that.
to
I think some
17?
commentary is.
No, I have
Yeah.
19 to 20 as well, so we'll finish 19 to 20 as well.
All right.
so are we
continue.
going to 20?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
And Jethro said, Go, and I wish you well. Now the Lord said to Moses in Midian,
Go back to Egypt, for all those who wanted to kill you are dead.
So Moses took his wife and sons and put them on a donkey and started back to Egypt, and he took the staff of God in his hand. The Lord said to Moses,
Ooh.
okay.
No, let's
Sorry.
stop.
Oh, are we
yeah.
gonna stop there?
That's
Okay.
21.
I would
Okay,
just like
so-
to point out that God's
I was ready to do
emotions
my
make
Uhura.
no sense. No sense at all, because like anger is a response to not getting something that you expected. Maybe not even that you wanted, but you expected. But he already knows, presumably, that Moses is going to chicken out, which is why Aaron is already literally on his way. He's on his way to meet you already. I knew you would be a chicken shit, but I'm still mad at you about it. What, like, this makes no sense.
He's like, oh my God, Moses, you're talking to God. Would you stop arguing? You know?
I know, but
I would first like to comment on verse 13. The in NIV it says, "Please send someone else," and the KJV reads, "Send, I pray thee, by the hand of him whom thou wilt send." In the Hebrew, it literally reads, as the JPS puts it, "Send through whomever you will send." And Rashi comments that this refers to Aaron, whom God is accustomed to send, as seen in the next verse. And now verse.
So, Hebrew scholars, what do you take from the unique grammar in 13?
there is like shlach in both in the beginning and the end, like shalach and tishlach.
Yeah, send please by the hand of the one that you send. Yeah, kind of.
So
Yeah.
send the guy you usually send, please, kind of.
Mhm.
Yes,
Yeah.
something like that.
Because
Could it say? Could
presumably,
it?
Yeah,
Could it be?
literally it means the hand, like
Yes.
with the hand you should send.
Could
but-
it? Could it mean? Could it possibly mean? I pray thee by the hand of him whom thou wilt send.
Well, I mean,
That's
Mm,
kind
the
of
translation.
the non-literal translation.
So that would be
Probably.
if we're talking about tenses here. So
Could
would be
could that
would.
possibly be?
So would
Jesus.
be an optative,
Yeah.
I think.
It's
Is that-
Jesus, right?
Hold on, is that an optative or maybe I'm misremembering my tenses here. But yeah, so you're suggesting a future tense. But I'm not.
I'm asking if it could.
Yeah. So like the
mean-
translation that is like the way of understanding this sentence isn't necessarily literal. You might just say send now with whom you would send.
That would
But
be
yeah,
more of a
literally it
present
means
tense
the hand
alliteration.
of your sending or
Yeah.
whatever. But it
I will comment on verse. I have 3 comments on this part. Verse 16, as if you were God to him. Targum Onkelos translates, and you will be his master. And most commentators understood it to mean that Moses will be a superior and chief of Aaron.
did you comment on 10?
I
No.
comment on 16.
Okay, so I want to go back to in let's say the beginning of this this bit. He
Yeah.
says, "Oh, I am heavy of mouth and heavy of tongue," right? And the idea is that Moses had some sort of speech impediment, and eventually it says, "Okay, Aaron will." English Aaron. But I've always grown up calling him Aaron anyway.
gonna be a
Aharon.
hard
It's,
thing.
it is called
Yeah.
Aharon in Hebrew.
Yeah, I know, but we pronounce
it's
it
kind of
just
similar,
Aaron,
yes.
So yeah.
Yes.
Yes, Aaron, he's the one who's going to speak in place. Like Moses would speak to Aaron, and Aaron would say it out loud for him. So I can't remember exactly if it's a midrash or the Talmud, but the story goes that when Moses was a child, like around 3 years old, in the palace, he was being weaned. They had a party, and even though the whole thing where like Pharaoh's astrologers, they were saying, oh, someone is going to come from one of the Jews is going to come and kill you, kill the kids, throw them into the river, and they stopped that on the day that Moses was rescued because when he was put in the basket in the water, the astrologers were like, oh, okay, he's in the water, it's fine. So they stopped looking. But I think I think the story is that they were still suspicious of this child, and they wanted to test him to see if he wanted to take over from Pharaoh. So they put in front of him 2 bowls, one a bowl full of gold and jewels, and the other one full of burning embers. And the idea was that if a normal child would reach out for the shiny thing, not the thing that actually has value, which is the gold. The embers are more shiny than gold. A child would reach for the embers, not for the gold. And if he was trying to, I think the reason why they were suspicious, I should say, is that he was on Pharaoh's lap, and he took the Pharaoh's crown off his head and put it on his own head, and they were like, this child is destined to overthrow the Pharaoh. So they did the test, and Moses, being a clever child, reached out for the gold, and an angel pushed his hand towards the embers so that they wouldn't be suspicious of him, and he grabbed the embers, and because he burnt his hand, he put it in his mouth to cool his hand down, and that's how he burnt his tongue, and that's where he
Like
got
children
his
do.
for. Yeah, so that's one of the more interesting stories that we will learn. I just don't remember where it's written. It's probably just a midrash. It's probably like midrash,
could be
in
Rashi as
Exodus
well. I don't
Rabbah
know.
or something like
It's
that.
always just a midrash. But
Yep.
I want to point out an interesting parallel here, right? So we're having this idea of signs being used to legitimize the role of, in this case, a deliverer. So this stands in. You can compare this to both Joshua, I think, in Judges 6.
Mhm.
Gideon in Judges 6, and then Saul in 1 Samuel 9 through 10. So I would say that the use of those signs is to get them to fully embrace God. And in a similar case, in the case of Moses, this is from Van Setters, there's been a considerable transformation of the form in that the signs are not a response to Moses' sense of inadequacy, which is now treated separately, but are meant to encourage the confidence of the people in Moses' prophetic word. This is now a primary focus. There is now a primary focus on faith in this unit. This reflects a transformation of the sign motif from the way it is used in the Deliverer's Commission to correspond to the prophetic traditions of Isaiah and Jeremiah. In the case of Isaiah 7, the case of Isaiah 7 is most instructive because it combines the theme of faith with that of sign. In Isaiah 7:9, Ahaz is urged by the prophet to show confidence in the previous salvation work and the divine support for the house of David. This is followed in the literary tradition by the prophet inviting the king to ask for a specific sign as a test of the prophetic word. Let it, quote, let it be as deep as Sheol or as high as heaven. The sign is clearly intended to be of an immediate and wondrous character. This is in 2 Kings 28 through 11, which Ahaz recognizes as testing God, but which he refuses to do. The prophet then proceeds to give him a sign of a quite different character, one symbolic of the coming events, to which he will get back to in some way. But the connection there between faith and signs and their usage, the usage of the signs, would speak to a developing literary tradition.
This theme of God, I think, recurs in the Bible, of God using somebody who isn't eloquent. So therefore, that's a sign in and of itself as the
Right.
messenger. Like all of the disciples of Jesus are illiterate, but not all of them. John, I think, and there was a tax collector, Matthew. But they're just poor fishermen, so this must be a sign.
The
that
appeal of
they're
humble origins.
Yeah.
It's
He
very
uses
common in
opposites a
religion.
lot. He
You
uses
have
opposites a lot.
you have the poor virgin girl as the mother of Christ. You have Muhammad, he couldn't even read or write. How could he have possibly come up with this great blah 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 blah? It's the excuse is always it must be divine because this person is such a schmuck.
You know what this reminds me of? So in ancient Greece, there was this guy, or I should say more specifically Athens. There was this guy Antiphon, and he is he's the first of the Attic orators. And in his argument, in his defense speech for Euxithius against the case was on the murder of Herodes. In the defense speech that he wrote for Euxithius, he says, or he writes, for Euxithius to say that, if I'm not a good speaker, so if I say something that is wrong, or if I say something that is contradictory, it's only because I'm a bad speaker. And if I say something that is true and you guys are convinced by it, something beautiful, that's because what I am saying is true. So he kind of gives himself a cop out. And that was that's a very early legal defense.
I hear Muslim apologists use that a lot.
Yeah, the text of the murder of Herodes.
Yeah,
interesting.
I think over
Christian
here it's more
apologists
about
with the embarrassing errors argument for the validity of the New Testament. I mean,
Yes.
same shit.
I think all of this in this story at least is about trying to portray Moses as being very humble and trying to say, "Oh, I'm not worthy of this job," blah 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 blah. And it's just so on verse 11 it says, "Who gave man a mouth, or who makes one dumb or deaf, or seeing a blind?" Right? There is another kind of story, which is not really a story, but the Midrash I think also mentions that when Moses fled from after killing, in the Bible it just says, he killed a man and Pharaoh knew about it and he fled and he went to Midian. So there is a story that he was actually captured and taken to court and then put on the executioner's block, whatever, and then he escaped. And so the idea is like, who made Pharaoh dumb that he did not make an effort to make a command to kill you properly, and who made the executioners blind, blah blah blah. It was I saved you, blah blah blah. Which is
Silly question. Why would God do this in the first place and not just fix the whole problem to begin with? Why go through the entire song and dance of it all?
Why create the problem by making people
For
dumb?
Exactly.
glory.
Why would you make him dumb? Okay.
Yeah.
Why would you not make him dumb then? Or why would you just not do the thing that caused the whole executioner's block? in the
How
first
long
place,
were
like
they
you
in
said?
slavery before God realized, hey, my chosen people are slaves? I should
400
do
years, I
something
think.
about this.
200.
Sounds like God's kind of a dick to me.
Well,
I
actually,
was-
the story, it seems like an excuse to make it about saving Moses, as opposed to God admitting that he's an asshole who tortures his creations with blindness, deafness, dumbness, and every other suffering.
To show his own glory. Even Jesus says that in the New Testament that who sinned, his parents, and why is he, I forget what his affliction was,
Born
and they
blind.
said that no one sinned. He's that way because to fulfill the glory of God. So Jesus could come along and show his magic powers, and everybody could believe in God.
Yeah. I'm gonna read
I
a
would
couple
like
comments
to.
because
Sure.
there's
Yeah,
time
Tomer-
backing up.
Just to
Wonder,
finish.
new member, says, just like Carlin said, my God has a bigger cock than your God's. Just like the Pharaoh guys.
Rest in
Then
peace,
Minute
George.
Rice, $5, says, I see Aaron getting a snake. Hooray for snakes.
Yay!
And then Tigra Fiden says, don't you love how they mansplain the most basic stuff that was already solved 1,000 years prior? Not sure what that's referring to. Then Jacques Polomer says, considering how funny Jewish comedians are, perhaps they had their start in the OT. It makes more sense as one big chuckle. And then
Yeah, it's like a comedy of God's errors.
yeah.
Oh,
Carolyn
wow.
says, what
The greatest
kind of
story
snake
ever
is
told,
it?
indeed.
Yeah. This is a Brazilian false water cobra.
That doesn't sound like
What
a
kind?
kind.
What kind is
That
it?
doesn't sound like a kind of Aaron.
We're talking about
Okay.
kinds here, okay?
The
I should-
non-speaking kind.
I did want to mention one thing before we move on in the reading.
Sure.
So this actually just kind of occurred to me. So there are a lot of prophets, I think, specifically Jeremiah, right? Like he even says that he is a bad speaker. And the interesting part here is that using someone who can't speak as a mouthpiece is great, right? Like this would be a way of, again, divine legitimation. If you cannot speak but all of a sudden are doing amazing speaking, that's a sign of God right there.
Yeah.
So this is that same kind of legitimation story that we find in Jeremiah.
Or the
And
sign
then
of
he's
someone
gonna-
clever enough to play dumb until they come out with their hit.
That too.
Well, Peter definitely didn't play dumb.
No, but he was treated dumb a whole lot, actually. Reading through the Gospels, I kind of felt bad for Peter. And
They're
then
definitely shitting on
especially in John, right, where it seems like the only purpose of the beloved disciple is to one up Peter, which is hilarious.
Oh.
But it's also like I gotta feel bad for this guy.
Yeah.
Right, let's get back
so
to
I would like-
Tomer.
Yes, I would like
yeah.
to finish verse 19. All those who wanted to kill you are dead. So Rashi comments that this refers to Dathan and Aviram, who I've mentioned in Exodus 2. Other commentators wrote that this refers to the Pharaoh who died in Exodus 2:23, and to the people who knew about Moses killing the Egyptian man.
Yeah, so the idea that Dathan and Aviram were the two men fighting, and they said, oh, we know who you killed an Egyptian man, and now it's saying that they're dead. That doesn't make sense because we only know about Dathan and Aviram from later on in the story. So
Yeah.
I think it's Rashi does mention that
He says,
they're called
I-
dead because you say it.
He says, really, they were still alive, but they had come down in the world, having lost their property, and a poverty-stricken man may well be regarded as dead.
And that's
What
actually a
are you
common
reading,
theme
dude?
in the Talmud.
That's Rashi.
Yeah.
Rashi?
So
What?
yeah,
What? This is Rashi. I'm
Rashi
gonna
is
write
the
down
number
all
one
this.
The
on
number
the
one
Bible.
Jewish commentator. Yes.
Yeah.
That's
So
some
verse
weird
20.
stuff, man.
Verse 20. Put them on a donkey. So the Hebrew Bible reads, "Put them on the donkey." So Rashi, based on Pirkei de Rabbi Eliezer 31, writes that this was the donkey in which Abraham had saddled for the purpose of traveling to bind Isaac, and the donkey in which the Messiah will show himself in public, according to Zechariah 9:9.
Yeah, they love
It
that
can't
stuff.
be the same donkey.
Well,
What's
it's definitely
going on?
not the same donkey, but it's the point is that this is a callback
It's a
to tradition.
Why not?
theme.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's a way for
The
them. It's a
reason
way for them to
why
tie back into previous historical narratives, for them to be like, oh, I am coming here as a representative of this guy, or in the same vein as this guy, so you should associate me with the other guy. So you get Jesus. You have callbacks to that Zechariah verse, to Moses, to
Mhm.
Joshua, to a whole bunch of people, because he's supposed to be fulfilling the law. So
I think they're supposed to be literally the same donkey. The reason why Rashi commentary is very important, and why he has a commentary on a verse, is because when you read the verse literally, the language of the verse, it's what's the word? It question begs something. So in this example, if you read the verse literally, it says, "And he saddled the donkey." Why is it the donkey? When you say "the," you're referring to something that is previously known.
That's
So
actually
that's
really cool
why
that you're meant. There's a
that's
lot
the
of little
reason.
things like
Yeah.
that they'll use in the Bible to tie things together.
Right, and that's why Rashi
Right,
has to
good point.
explain it, because this is his commentary is
That's
supposed
pretty
to
cool.
be the basic understanding of a 5-year-old reading the Bible for the first time. He reads it and he's like, I don't understand this. Rashi answers the question. So he says, why is it the donkey? Because it is the same donkey, the designated donkey, that is the one that Abraham saddled for the binding of Isaac, and it will also be. And then he brings a tradition that says this is also the same donkey that
For
is
Jesus.
that the Messiah will, the
Yeah.
Christ, maybe you
Actually,
could say,
that
but not necessarily
disqualifies
Jesus.
That's
Jesus
really
because
interesting.
that disqualifies Jesus because Jesus rode on a donkey that had never been ridden before. But I don't know what I'm taking
But it's
from
a
this is
different
that
tradition, but
yeah, no, I
Wait,
know,
neither
but
did it say that? Did it say that it
It's
never
that
been
it's
written?
yes, it did.
what he
I
just
can't
said.
remember which gospel, but
Yeah.
what I'm
So-
taking from this is that if you take the Bible literally, you end up having to write a lot of fan fiction to make it make sense.
Well,
Yes.
it's just
So
I think in a way it's prophetic. So I
so
think
what
that was interesting.
We'll get to
something
the
interesting
prophecies
that's
in due
connected.
time.
Yeah.
Something that's
Yeah.
connected to this,
Why-
which is very interesting.
The
like
asses are
another-
prophetic. That's cool.
Ah.
Yeah. Nice one. Yeah, so this is actually connected to this idea that when God created the world, before he created the world, he created 6 things. I think it was 7 things, whatever he created before he created the world. And one of these is the donkey. And also, I don't know if it's the same donkey or another donkey for the one that speaks to
Why the donkey?
Balaam, is also supposed to be pre-existent.
Yeah.
And also
Why
a
the
pair of
donkey of
tongues.
all?
Is he also the donkey? When
I don't know if it's the same. I can't remember if it's the same
don't-
donkey.
I don't
I'll
know
have to
either.
look that up. That's
Also,
One of
the-
the
Is
other
he also
items,
the talking donkey?
That's,
Yeah,
that's the one he's
talking
referring
about
to,
Balaam.
yeah.
That's why I can't remember if it's
We're-
the same donkey or not.
that is
Um,
interesting, but also the Balaam thing. There is a
Yeah.
really good an actual piece of historical evidence.
Well, we'll get to that, I
yeah,
believe.
it is.
About
It's
we-
really
I-
exciting.
we
about
need to
Balaam.
move
let's
on.
wait till we get that.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'll just say that one of the other instruments that were pre-existent was a pair of tongs, because people were like, how can you make a pair of tongs without a pair of tongs? So there had to be one pre-existent.
It's
Okay.
so
I love it.
silly.
Let's move on. This
Yeah.
part is actually the most interesting. I actually made 2
Yeah.
pages of commentary on that on the part that we'll read later on. So
Okay, so
Okay.
we're on 21, right?
yes,
Oh,
Okay.
Wait, there's
So
one
21.
last thing then, if we
Okay.
just
sure.
yeah, one last thing, which is, and it says, he returned to the land of Egypt, and Moses took the staff of Lord God in his hand. Rashi says, chronological order is not strictly adhered to in the scriptures.
Yeah. There is no
Hmm.
early or late in scripture, literally.
It's
Okay.
it's not kept. It's not. It doesn't. It's not strict about it. What
Yes.
comes first? What comes later? Thank you, Rashi.
except for in the beginning. Just kidding. Number 21. The Lord said to Moses,
When you return to Egypt, see that you perform before Pharaoh and all the wonders I have given you the power to do. But I will harden his heart, so that he will not let the people go.
then say to
Then
Pharaoh.
say to Pharaoh, this is what
Oh.
the Lord says, Israel, my firstborn son, and I told you, let my son go, and he shall worship me. But you refused to let him go because I made you refuse. So I will kill your firstborn son because I'm playing both sides of the chessboard. And you have no free will because I've hardened your heart. Sorry.
Okay, 24. At a lodging place on the way, the Lord met Moses and was about to kill him. But Zipporah took a flint knife, cut off her son's foreskin, and touched Moses' feet with it. Surely you're a bridegroom of blood to me, she said. So the Lord let him alone. At the time, she said, bridegroom of blood, referring to circumcision.
This
makes
has got to
sense.
be one of the weirdest moments in
Yeah,
all
yeah.
of the
Yeah,
Moses
I
stories. Just
I
a
think so too.
random
Really-
flying
should-
we really
foreskin.
You
we
should
really
finish
should have
this
stopped
chapter.
at 23 and then taken a break and then went to 24.
You should finish this
24.
chapter and then I'll
Okay.
discuss it.
Okay.
Okay.
The Lord said to Aaron,
All right, I lost where I am on the page. Okay, here we go.
27.
27.
Go
Yeah.
into the wilderness and to meet Moses.
So he met Moses at the mountain of God and kissed him. Then Moses told Aaron everything the Lord had sent him to say, and also about all the signs he had commanded him to perform. Moses and
story.
Aaron brought together all the elders of the Israelites, and Aaron told them everything the Lord had said to Moses. He had also performed the signs before the people, and they believed. And when they heard that the Lord was concerned about them and had seen their misery, they bowed down in worship.
Okay, so let's go back to the story in verses 24 to 26. It's also called the Tzipporah in the inn story, or Tzipporah in the inn, or just the bridegroom of blood. So this is the
Well, Tomer,
the
can we
weirdest-
not skip? I mean,
I'm
there-
talking about it right now.
We'll
Oh.
go back to the hardened heart thing. But let's
Oh.
talk about the flying foreskins first.
okay, we'll do foreskins first. All right.
So there's a lot of things that are just very weird about this, and
No shit.
several translations and commentators have all tried to understand what the heck it means. So first up, who was the attacker exactly? So while the Masoretic text reads that God wanted to kill Moses, the Septuagint, the Aramaic translations, and Saadia Gaon identified the attacker as the angel of the Lord. And several commentators also wrote that this refers to an angel. The Book of Jubilees, 48 verses 2 and 4, 2 to 4, identified the attacker as Prince Mastema, another name for Satan. The Talmud in Nedarim 32a identified the attacker as either Satan or the destructive angels named Af and Chema. Now, the question of why was he attacked? So the Talmud in Nedarim 31b and 32a, it reads, Rabbi Yehoshua ben Kocha says, so great is the mitzvah of circumcision that all the merits that Moses, our teacher, accrued when he performed mitzvot did not protect him when he was negligent about the performing of the mitzvah of circumcision, as it is stated, and the Lord met him and sought to kill him. Rabbi Yehuda Hanasi said, heaven forbid that Moses, our teacher, was neglectful of the mitzvah of circumcision. Rather, this is what he said. If I was neglectful of if I circumcise the child now and depart to begin my journey, it is a danger for the child, as it is stated, and it came to pass on the third day when they were in pain. But according to this explanation, for what reason was Moses punished? Because he was occupied with lodging first. A different opinion is given in Nedarim 32a. Rabban Shimon ben Gamliel says, it was not Moses, our teacher, that Satan wanted to kill, but rather that infant who was not circumcised. As it is stated, surely a bridegroom of blood are you to me, in verse 25. Go out and see. Who is called the bridegroom? You must say that this is
Bridegroom.
the bridegroom.
Bridegroom.
Sorry. Yes.
Well, it says
Anybody else?
bridge groom to me. Mine says bridge groom also.
Yeah, sorry about that. Who is called the bridegroom? You must say that this is the infant. And verse 25 here, Exodus Rabbath 5:8 reads, "How did Zipporah know that Moses was in jeopardy because of this delay to perform the circumcision? Because the angel came and swallowed Moses from his head to his circumcised membrum. When
Oh my
Zipporah
God.
perceived that, she realized that he was being threatened on account of this delay in circumcising.
That's
And she recognized the
That's
great protective
disgusting.
power of circumcision, seeing that he could not swallow him further than that membrum. So
Yeah.
immediately she cut off the foreskin of her son. And there's actually there is a archaeological finding called the Arslan Tash amulet.
Mm.
Oh, I thought you were gonna
The-
say his foreskin for a second. there.
Yes, which is a description of an angel or
I'm getting all
demon
sweaty just for this.
swallowing a person from head up to his legs, which is kind of interesting.
Similar,
Like
yeah.
a preservation of this like tradition or something like that.
So I
How
think-
is
Well,
it
we have
that the
another
first thing that
serpent
someone
now,
can
which
do
is
that
nice.
someone's gonna be killing you that you cut off a kid's dick? I just don't.
It's
And
you know.
I just don't. That's the first
She-
response is to do something.
She didn't
like that.
seem to be very happy about having to do this.
I finally
To
have
do it
one
at
for.
all. What makes you think that? Oh, this person's gonna try to kill my kid. Okay, let's go ahead and cut the dick tip off and see if that does it.
I finally
I'm
have.
sorry. It just this is
It would probably freak out an attacker, in all fairness, and they might run away.
freak out me. Like
I mean, what
crazy.
the hell?
This
This
kid's
lady's
dick.
crazy. Run for it.
A
I
giant
also-
snake that
help me
swallowed
with
half
the
his
context
body.
of the story. I don't know if you guys just covered this or not, but I'm a little lost. As God says, "Go and do this thing I told you," and then while Moses is on his way to do the thing that he was told to do, God shows up wanting to kill him.
Or the
I'm-
Lord of the angel of the Lord, or Satan. Yeah, you're very far.
Right.
Too far away, my dude.
It's,
Get up,
it,
get up.
it depends.
Hold the
It
mic
depends on
closer.
what version you read.
Ah, I see.
Yeah,
I
one
do
opinion
wanna-
is that he.
Get up.
One
I
opinion is
found
that he should have circumcised his son before
and
leaving.
and what's
and
with
take the
this
son with
random?
him, even though it was dangerous. And the second opinion is that when they came to the lodging place, the inn or whatever, he should have straight away used that time to have circumcised his son, rather than focusing on organizing lodging or whatever.
Oh, I don't know if this is related, but did Joseph and Mary they tried to stay in an inn. I just thought it was kind of random. The inn. There's
It's
an inn
pretty
here, there's an
normal
inn
when
there.
you're
I mean, the
traveling.
word it's translated as inn, but it can just mean like any place where you stay the night or whatever. It's more of a modern
Interesting.
translation, I think.
So I
Um,
know. So Tomer, you
tell.
noted the Arslan Tash amulets, right?
Yes.
Yes. So interestingly, I actually covered these for my video on Lilith, which everyone should go watch. But so these, I'm just going to read a little section from it because I think it's really interesting to kind of see the time period and the mythology of this period. So now that is one thing that he noted. Furthermore, so these small plaques were found in northern Syria and present an important step in the way I used it was in the evolution of the Lilith myth. So the thing is, the authenticity of them is in debate. Now, I did not take them after reading Jacobus Van Dyke's paper on it. I did not take away that they were inauthentic. So, but either way, I came to the I think they're authentic. So following the scholarship of Frank Moore Cross and Richard Saley, these amulets date to the 7th century BCE. Written in Phoenician script, the inscriptions refer to 3 categories of demons: Sasam the god, lamb stranglers, and divine flyers. So one of these lines, for example, is "Oh flyers from the dark room pass away, now night demons." So talking about these night demons that are these divine flyers, and it should be noted that the word Cross and Saley translate as night demons is actually Lilin. So this is one of our earliest Lilith mentions as well, which I found really interesting in my studies.
Yeah, I mean, Lilith seems to be associated with both succubus type, blame for nighttime emissions, but also for, the death of children in their cribs. And that's why protective amulet protective against Lilith was, what that is. At least that's the story, exactly when that came. And I believe, doesn't it invoke the name of the three angels with whom she's supposed to have come to some sort of a deal with when she refused to go back to Eden and Adam?
That's in the alphabet of Ben Sira. So that's where the initial story comes from.
Right. Oh, yeah. No, I mean that the amulets themselves, I believe, reference those or have the signs of those three angels, as a protection against me.
Yeah.
But it's an interesting thing. The obsession with dicks and their tips is very strange to me.
I actually haven't finished this. But
why did we skip to it then?
I just want to point out one thing.
Part of this chapter.
I know. We always argue about the documentary hypothesis, but this is taken as from a different source. And I have to say, the way that the random, and then they cut off a kid's dick tip to save Moses, and then we carry on with the story thing kind of comes in. I have to say, a variation in authorship here seems pretty probable.
The whole story is 3 sentences, so
yeah, it's a weird
insert.
And why is it in here? How did God not know that he was going to want to kill Moses? How could God have wanted to kill Moses and failed to kill Moses? How could God not foresee that he would fail to kill Moses, or that he would want to kill Moses before he said any of this?
Well, and going back to hardening his heart, this is argued by some to be a redactor, but I will harden his heart that he will not let the people go, which is where you end up with.
Why did he turn a rod into a serpent and back to a rod again? What was the point?
But with that, it seems like you're retrofitting it to make God sovereign, and it reminds me of Calvinism. The more you make God sovereign, the more of a raging asshole he is by necessity.
Doesn't change the fact that he's God, whether he's a dick or not.
He isn't God.
He clearly doesn't know everything. He doesn't have omniscience. He doesn't see the future,
and he's not all good. Clearly,
he's definitely not good.
Yeah.
So I want to finish my commentary for this story. So. Whose legs are those? So some commentators like Rashi, Ibn Ezra, and Rashbam wrote that these was Moses' legs. Others, like Gersonides and Chizkuni, wrote that it was the son's legs. Targum Pseudo-Jonathan translates that it was the legs of the angel. So even the legs, they don't know who the heck are.
So we're talking about whose legs she touched the foreskin to?
Okay. Yeah.
No, she refers to, she's speaking to her husband, which is Moses.
Well, others say that it does not refer to the husband. It refers to either the son or the
she
angel.
says, surely a bloody husband thou art to me, after she throws it at his
I
feet.
wanted to say that. Okay, so I'm going to talk about this as well. So the Septuagint translates the bridegroom of blood to me as the blood of the circumcision of my child is staunched. Targum Onkelos translates, with this blood of circumcision a husband is given to us. Rashi comments, you have brought it about that my bridegroom, i.e. Moses, was on the point of being killed because of you. You have been to me my husband's murderer. And Professor Yitzchak Avishur comments, Tzipporah does the same act as the people of Israel, who took the blood of the sacrifice and gave it on the 2 doorposts and the lintel of their homes as a defense mechanism against the plague and the destroyer in Exodus 12. The circumcision of Zipporah's son in her hand is an act which is done in a time of mortal danger, and its purpose was apotropaic. A Phoenician tradition of circumcision in times of mortal danger was preserved by Philo of Byblos. At the occurrence of a fatal plague, Kronos immolated his only son to his father Uranus and circumcised himself, forcing the allies who were with him to do the same. The word for bridegroom, chatan, is probably to be interpreted from the Akkadian verb chatanu, to defend. Therefore, bridegroom of blood means blood defended.
Yeah, and I think
I'm trying to picture this in my mind. So God is God, so he's going to be really quick about killing Moses for his heresy or whatever of not circumcising his son, and she quickly undresses her kid and circumcises him, you know, and touches it to Moses' feet. I mean, that's a lot, you know. That
Hold
would
still, kiddo.
I
Yeah.
think
We're still. I'm
She
a
uses a
little
sharp
confused
stone.
because in all the
Yeah.
times that
Oh,
all
I
the
don't
times
have
I
that
read the
story.
story, I didn't get that God was a snake who was trying to swallow Moses whole.
Or an
Yeah,
angel
that-
of
That was
God,
the
that's-
maybe.
angel. That was the angel.
That's the additional reading.
Yeah.
And that's not something you see in Christian tellings of this, honestly. Even in, like, I had ridiculously evangelical must tell all parts of the stories that we can take the sex out of, you know, to the kids in all their detail. And even this, like, they'd skip over this because it is just 3 lines and it also makes no fucking sense.
Well, how did we
Yeah.
skip over 22 and 23?
Because
Clearly,
these
24 and 25 is
verses
not going to make
are
sense.
the most interesting story, in my opinion, the
They
most
don't
interesting
connect.
story in this chapter.
We probably should have done the commentary in order though, but
We
Yeah.
build up
definitely
to
should
it.
have.
Because what
Let's
you
do it
have,
for P-Town. He wants to read it, so let's go ahead and go
Sure
back
thing.
to that.
let's finish 26 and then we'll go back to 22.
I finished 26. That's it.
Okay. Well,
All right,
Okay.
yeah.
And let's
We're
do
back
that.
to
22, 23.
26.
I
Let's
finished the
talk
commentary.
about God's a manipulative asshole now.
I would say the
Sure,
last thing
sure.
is that she
Can we do a-
explains like the last line, right? The last line it says he released him, and then she said a bridegroom of blood concerning the circumcision. So the Rashi just explains that because when he released him, right, according to the story, right, he released him. She was able to be like, aha, so it was because of the circumcision, and then she says, so my bridegroom would have been murdered because of the circumcision. That's what the
Wasn't Moses
both
born
mean.
circumcised according to some of the myths?
Yep. Yeah, but she's saying my bridegroom, my husband, would have been murdered because of this circumcision, which didn't
Mhm.
happen.
Okay.
Mhm.
Okay,
Yeah,
so
I
we're
guess
going back
I guess you guys
Black
wanted
magic
to
is
hop
weird.
into the hardening of Pharaoh's heart there.
well, I think we kind of covered
well,
that.
I
Right.
actually covered that
touched
in
on it.
I think it's chapter 6 or chapter 7. I'm not sure, which is more in depth analysis of this. So
It is, yeah, because there are parts where it says Pharaoh. It uses a passive where it's like Pharaoh's heart was hardened, and
Yeah.
then in other times it says that he hardened Pharaoh's heart.
It switches back and forth, yeah. But here
Yeah,
it says
that's
God
just-
says, "I will harden his heart."
Yeah,
I think it's
yeah.
noteworthy.
So I think we'll get
It's
to that when we
important,
reach
but-
chapter 7, which I think it appears
But,
there.
but look at
Tomo,
this.
you don't have any commentary for 22 and 23?
Not really. I mean, I
okay,
wasted
why-
all my commentary on these 3
That's fair.
verses.
No, but I think
Okay, well,
Yeah,
I'll-
Let's look at 22 and 23.
can
And thou shalt
demonstrate-
say unto Pharaoh, Thus saith the Lord, Israel is my son, even my firstborn. I say unto
Yes,
thee, Let my son go, that he may serve me. And if thou refuse to let him go, behold, I will slay my son, even thy firstborn.
So I
So
think it's
this
valid
whole
to point
pattern
out that
of-
it was planned ahead.
It's just
Yeah,
this
yeah.
whole this idea that God is claiming Israel as his son and as his firstborn. To me, I think it has meaning on many different levels. Going back, I think last time I patterned it with, but there's a peculiar thing in Genesis 22 where God tells Abraham to sacrifice his only son,
Mhm.
even though it's not his only son, clearly, because you have Ishmael. So there's a contradiction
Yeah.
there.
we did
Son
we
of
did
the concubine.
cover
is
this.
Right,
We
we've
did
already
cover
done that. The
that.
point
Yeah.
is
Commentary on
my,
that.
Yeah.
and this is just P-Town commentary. I'm no specialist, but what I want to say is it's just interesting here that God is referring to Israel as being his son and his firstborn. So the whole imagery of there being a birth of a nation, but also I'm going to say it kind of points to the Messiah.
To Jesus.
Not
You know,
really.
Oh
as
no,
this is annoying to me.
I
I will-
know.
Because
I will
like
mention.
there is definitely prophecy throughout the Old Testament of the Messiah, and yes, there's the New Testament with Jesus, but like seeing it in nearly every chapter, it's like I don't know, it seems like trying too hard, you know.
And especially when
It
we get to
feels
the
very
part
shoehorned in.
where the Bible explains
yeah.
what the Messiah was supposed to be and what he was supposed to do. And you find that the Jews' expectations of the Messiah, none of them were met by Jesus. The only qualification that Jesus actually met was that he was Jewish, and even that was dubious because it was through Joseph that he's the son of David, which Joseph wasn't supposed to be his father anyway. So Jesus met
Well,
none, zero of the.
Well,
quite
he was
frankly,
an
even though I'm just being introduced to the Talmud and this Amastaham guy, quite frankly, I'm not very
What?
impressed.
Who?
So it doesn't really
What does the Talmud
surprise
have
me.
to do with this?
Well, I'm not so
We use
far
it as
the
commentary.
commentary
Yeah.
of
Yeah,
what
it's a Talmud.
supposedly these Jewish rabbis thought was coming really is just noise to me because
But
I haven't
Pete
been
Town, do
impressed
you
so far.
Well,
understand that
Okay.
Isn't that ironic?
you're holding thousands of years of religious analysis commentary by the people whose religion this actually is, up to the standard of your own presuppositions and finding it wanting? I feel like the weight of priority is just really askew there.
Well, the thing is, I kind of on some level I totally agree with P-Town that like for the most part I don't really care what the rabbis felt about this. What it shows you is an evolution of the faith rather than
Yeah.
the faith in any of its original forms. So while that is important in its own right, if we're trying to get to the meaning of the Bible, we need to look past that stuff because yeah, there are a whole bunch of Talmudic midrashic explanations for a lot of this stuff that isn't textually supported in any way. And frankly, I don't really care if it was tradition or not. If I want to understand the Bible, the things that I'll be reading are is critical scholarship on it, and critical scholarship was not exactly what rabbis were doing.
No,
So
not at
it's a
all.
completely different
Far
methodology.
from it.
So
Yeah.
in that sense, I agree
The
with Town that
yeah,
Now, what was
the
going on in the culture at the time? That's important.
exactly if we have
And
to
that's
understand the culture.
what the Talmud gives you is
Yeah, the
cultural
Talmud is
points of
not
reference.
No, it
yeah,
tells
but
you a culture from later. When,
yeah, a
He's
few hundred
he's
years
to
later.
differentiate the Talmud, which is contemporary to this text, to Rashi, who is medieval. So that's after the
Yeah.
fact and stuff.
Yeah. So yeah, you kind of see the evolution of the understanding. But yeah, if you want to, it does give you a bit more of like how did Jewish people in the time of in the time of Jesus even, how did they understand the text? And this gives us a bit more insight into
Yeah,
how the
like
Jews at the
that's
time understood their own text. And
yeah.
yeah, it's possible that when it was written a couple of hundred years before, those teachings weren't necessarily part of it. The traditional view of rabbinic Judaism is that Moses was given the Torah at Mount Sinai, but he was also given an oral Torah as well. And the idea is that the Talmud records teachings from that oral law, which was passed down. So yeah, they read the text and they were like, this is obviously not literal, or this bit is obviously missing context. And so that's where their belief, where there had to have been given at the same time an explanation for this, right? It says in later on we'll come across where God says something like, keep my Sabbath holy and keep the laws regarding it. And it's like, what laws regarding it? Obviously it's in another text or another tradition that was passed along at the same time. And so there the rabbis are able to say, these are the laws.
When we
about
get to
Sabbath.
the law parts of
Yeah.
the Bible, then we'll really
Yeah,
go
yeah.
into them.
Oh yeah.
Sure. Trevor on Wright says, what is the point of miracles if God couldn't even convince Pharaoh of his existence? So what historically is the point of the Exodus anyway?
Oh, he could. He just didn't want to because torturing people for his glory appears to be a theme.
Yeah. Berend Mulder says, is this the cause of the child foreskin fascination of priests?
Oh.
Ooh.
Yeah.
You can say it's a pretty
Zekius-
deep cut.
Zekius says, to Lilith's comment about the donkey and Jesus, John's gospel is the one that specifies that it's a young donkey, so likely hasn't been ridden before.
I also did look it up. It's in Mark as well.
Got
So I'd have to check just to make sure. I'd have to check like a textual commentary on it. But it does say that in there.
There is a comment, that it had never been written, and they had to put their cloaks on its back, trying to get it to, be calm.
But the thing is,
chill.
it was tied up, right? So it belonged to somebody, right?
Oh, they totally stole it.
Yeah,
or
they
It was
borrowed.
prepared. It was prepared. And also, young donkey doesn't necessarily mean that it was literally 2 years old. It just means that it's physically was a young donkey as opposed to an elderly donkey.
Well, yeah,
So
yeah.
It doesn't
But-
necessarily contradict the tradition.
No, but
One-
but what I'm saying is that they just obviously stole it. So
Yeah, they
And
did.
he
But in
sold
one-
this
in one
horse
gospel,
to
it
him
specifically
saying it
says
was
he's
4
relatives
years
on it.
old. It was
What are you
really
talking
12.
about? They saw a donkey tied up, and it was obviously a sign from God that this was the donkey they should use. So
Obviously. Jeez.
Then
Lord
Wander,
died.
new
no such
member,
thing as a coincidence.
Huh.
Wander says, "What does the Hebrew text says? Was it God or an angel or God dressed as an angel?"
Well, in the Hebrew it says the God, the Lord, the Yehovah, but in other versions
Jehovah.
like the Septuagint and Targum Onkelos, I think, it says the angel of the Lord.
which verse?
24.
24. Okay, I'll just check the Septuagint. Just
And
to-
as I said, Book of Jubilees identifies as Satan or Prince Mastema. So
Yeah, and
And
it
then
is
while you're doing
possible,
that,
according to some, that the Septuagint
Janoshi
is
comments
actually
that Blood,
earlier.
Dicks, and Sacrifice was the original title of the Bible.
No wonder it's
That
the world's
sounds more
bestseller.
appropriate.
That's legendary.
Are we going to go to chapter 5? It's 22 verses, and my commentary here on this chapter is not that long.
Okay, let's do it.
All right.
Okay. Chapter 5. Here
Yeah.
we go.
Real fast. Does Zipporah leave him?
Not
Because
yet.
Moses has 2 wives.
That-
But that happens though, right? Okay.
No, he doesn't have 2 wives, but she does. He
She
does send her
ditches
back
out.
later.
She's
Was there also
that happens.
Miriam?
I think that happens
There
in
is
this
a
chapter.
Cushite
No?
wife later on, but I don't.
Ah.
I
Really...
think she stays in Midian is the thing.
Hmm.
Or she
Later,
back
there's a
Midian
later
later.
text
She
here.
goes back at one point.
Oh,
Yeah,
is
and then
that
she
why he
returns
toasts
with her
the
father.
entire town? Is because his ex lives there.
but she gets
Wow.
pissed and ditches though for a while or something.
Should we
We'll see what
continue
happens.
should we continue the Panto version of the Bible?
Yes, Panto.
Well, what does this mean?
I've
Okay.
never seen a Panto, so maybe that was a bad
Okay.
analogy.
Okay.
My sister was just in a Panto, so.
Okay, so Chicken, Mighty Chicken, you're still reading
Yes.
Moses, right?
I'm gonna choose a different voice though.
Oren has to do
God, yes.
Yeah,
He's awesome. Okay,
Yeah, it's great.
afterward, Moses and Aaron went to Pharaoh and said,
Thus says the Lord, the God of Israel, let my people go, that they hold a feast to me in the wilderness, precious.
Okay, so Moses did say that he wasn't a good speaker.
"Yeah, that is so."
Precious.
But it also
Okay.
says
Gomer,
that-
you're the pharaoh.
Okay,
really?
Tomer's
I
the
think, wait,
Pharaoh.
wait.
Why?
I think that was Aaron's role, right?
No,
No,
Aaron
Aaron is
God.
God.
Aaron's
Tomer's
Gomer
the
is the
Pharaoh.
Pharaoh.
Okay, Pharaoh.
Does say wait, hold on. a second. In my version, it says that God says that.
Weird.
Wait, hold on a
Uh,
second. Where
no,
am I? Am I lost?
Israel.
You're
Yeah,
lost.
Yeah, we're on
we're
the
in five.
First 2.
I think it's a quotation of a quotation is the thing.
5.
Yeah.
We're in chapter
Yeah.
5:1, right?
5-2.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's,
5:1.
it says that the Lord God of Israel. says
Yeah,
that.
Okay,
this is
well,
what the Lord
then-
God of
that
Israel
he
says,
Oh.
let my people go. Yeah.
Oh,
Okay.
I'm sorry. It's a double thing. Got it.
Yeah.
Sorry,
Yeah, double
my
quotation.
500-year-old Hobbit voice is probably not as strong as it should be. So
Okay.
How should I say
Oh,
it?
I see. I guess I really do need quotations on mine.
Should
Yeah.
I have Pharaoh as the boring teenager or the
You do Pharaoh
Israeli
however
accent?
the spirit moves you.
I even have it highlighted and circled with a hyphen, and then it says man, and I still screwed up. I don't know.
Yeah.
Okay, let's
Okay.
move
Yeah,
on.
do it
Let's
in
read,
an-
let's
You have
read.
to do it in an unreformed Egyptian accent.
Verse 2. Verse 2. Pharaoh said,
Who is the Lord that I should heed him and let Israel go? I do not know the Lord, nor will I let Israel go.
Then they said, that's Aaron and Moses. Then they
No.
said,
Yeah.
Oh, that's me. Oh,
Moses.
Yeah.
The God of the Hebrews has met with us. Let us go, we pray, a 3 days journey into the wilderness of Mordor and sacrifice the Lord of the Rings, lest the Lord pass pestilence with a sword.
Eru Ilavata.
but the king of Egypt said,
Moses and Aaron, why do you distract the people from the task? Get to your labors.
then Pharaoh said,
The people of the land are already so numerous, and you would have them cease from their labors.
that same day Pharaoh gave this order to the slave drivers and overseers in charge of the people.
You shall no longer provide the people with straw for making bricks as heretofore. Let them go and gather straw for themselves, but impose upon them the same quota of bricks as they have been making heretofore. Do not reduce it, for they are shirkers. That is why they cry, let us go and sacrifice to our God. Let heavier work be laid upon those involved. Let them keep it at and not pay attention to deceitful promises.
Then the slave drivers and the overseers went out and said to the people, This is what Pharaoh says. I will not give you any more straw. Go and get your own straw, wherever you can find it, but your work will not be reduced at all. So the people scattered all over Egypt to gather stubble to use for the straw. And the slave drivers kept pressing them, saying, Complete your work, required of you for each day, just as when you had straw. And Pharaoh's slave drivers beat the Israelite overseers they had appointed, demanding, Why haven't you met your quota of bricks yesterday or today or as before? Then the
So
Israelite
I'm
overseers...
getting that I'm
Wait,
getting that
Aaron,
Tomer's Pharaoh is Elon.
Elon Musk.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh,
Ooh.
I just thought of a
Mhm.
generic teenager who's bored of everything.
Well,
I
it's
think-
not
like
you were-
Aaron said,
you were
it's
just,
yeah. there you go.
Okay, let's move on.
I think it was
Let's move
just
on.
you as a
Petty one,
teenager.
That's true.
But I did want to note something about this this
Wait,
construction.
Lawrence, let's finish this chapter and then, okay?
Okay.
All right.
Right. Then the Israelite overseers went and appealed to Pharaoh. Why have you treated your servants this way? Your servants are given no straw, yet we are told, Make bricks! Your servants are being beaten. Sorry about that. But the fault is with your own people. And Pharaoh said,
You are shirkers. This is why you say, let us go and sacrifice to the Lord. Be off now to your work. No straw shall be issued to you, but you must produce your quota of bricks.
Israelite overseers realized they were in trouble when they were told, You're not to reduce the number of bricks required for you for each day. When they left Pharaoh, they found Moses and Aaron waiting to meet them, and they said, May the Lord look on you and judge you. You have made us obnoxious to the Pharaoh and his officials, and have put a sword in their hand to kill us. So Moses returned to the Lord and said,
Oh Lord, why hast thou done evil to this people? Why dost thou send me? For since I come to Paris to speak my name, he has done evil to this people, and thou hast not delivered thy people at all.
Uh-oh.
Mhm.
Better hold God back now.
Dun, dun,
Moses
dun.
assassinated him again. Oh
Okay.
no.
He doesn't like people
So,
talking
Lawrence,
back
what-
to him.
Yeah.
What was the commentary?
Okay.
No more of
Yeah.
that.
So it was actually about the straw bricks. So I saw someone in chat asking about like. Oh, straw
Yes,
bricks.
I've
What
also
was that?
had one for I've quoted Nahum Sana about
Hold on, Tom.
Okay, yeah, I think
Let
yeah,
Lawrence
Nahum
go.
Starner should be fine on that. But so yeah, the thing is the straw was put into the mud before baking, so it kind of worked for cohesiveness. Yeah, crushed straw was used to give cohesiveness to the bricks before baking. But I do want to point out, so There has been a comparison made by Kruzman, F. Kruzman, and he compares it to the building of Solomon's Solomon's building activity. But he does, to be fair, overstate the case. And Van Setters points out that even though like the case is overstated, the monumental architecture built by labor gangs in Mesopotamia during the Neo-Babylonian Empire, the exilic period, was almost exclusively of brick. Thus, one could restate the proposition that any reader of the Yahwist in the exilic period would certainly have had in mind the similarity between Pharaoh and Nebuchadnezzar and the Babylonian regime and their release from any such obligations.
Yeah, I can
Oh, that's
see that.
interesting.
Yeah.
That's very interesting.
Yeah, Van Setters, the GOAT.
Yeah.
Van
No,
Okay,
Setters is
so I'll
dope.
start.
Come here.
I'll start with verse 3. He may strike us with plagues or with the sword. So according to Exodus Rabbah 5:15, they should have said, he may strike you, but they showed respect to the king by expressing it to themselves. Ibn Ezra writes that God will punish both the Hebrews and the Egyptians, and Gersonides writes that they intended to say that if the Hebrews will die, then Pharaoh will not have them as slaves.
The city is made of brick, my lord. The strong make many, the weak make few, the dead make none.
These are
And now verse 6, the overseers. In Hebrew, it's shotrav, in singular shoter. The word is used several times in the Bible, for example, Numbers 11:16, Deuteronomy 29:9, Joshua 1:10, etc. KJV translates officers. The Septuagint translates recorders, interestingly enough. Saadia Gaon translates the word nokshim, slave drivers in the NIV, to military chiefs, and the shoter is of a lower ranking than the nogesh. Rashi comments that shoter, overseer, was one who was appointed to have control over the workmen, and the nogesh was given charge over many shoters. Modern Hebrew for shoter is policeman.
Yeah, also I think Rashi says that the
ACAB.
Nogesh, the taskmasters, were Egyptian, and the Shotrim, the officers,
Yeah,
were
but I think
Israelites.
it is hinted later on in the chapter.
Ah, okay.
The
Yeah.
overseers of the yes. So about the brick makings. So Nahum Sana writes, the common building material in Egypt was the alluvial mud supplied by the Nile River and was shaped into bricks by laborers. The artisan who molded the bricks would receive from the workers baskets of water-soaked clay mixed with stubble gathered from the fields. He would then shape the material either by hand or in a rectangular wooden mold. The brick would be left to dry in the sun for about 3 days and then turned over, so that the entire process took just about a week. A practiced artisan in present-day Egypt, where the same brick-making technique as employed from time immemorial can still be observed, is capable of turning out about 3,000 bricks in the course of a 7 to 8 hour working day. Such a quota imposed on raw slaves would constitute an intolerable burden.
That's true.
His heart was hardened.
And
My God.
finally,
No.
verse 21, you have made us obnoxious to Pharaoh. KJV reads, ye have made our Savior to be abhorred in the eyes of Pharaoh. The Hebrew Bible also reads, you have stunk our smell in the eyes of Pharaoh. This is an example of synesthesia in the Bible. Other examples include Exodus 20:18, the people saw the thunder, and Exodus 10:21, darkness that can be felt. I like Ibn Ezra's commentary on this. He says, note that the 5 verse senses are perceived in one place located above the forehead. Hence, one sense is substituted for another sense. However, Rabbi Merinus, aka Jonah ibn Janach, says that its meaning is we are as disgusting and abhorrent in his eyes as a foul odor. Saadia Gaon translated, you have ruined our condition.
Actually,
So these are all these. So these are not like unusual requests, but these are unusual burdens that the Pharaoh's putting on.
well, the removing of straw means taking out a necessary step of the process and demanding that they do all the additional
Right.
work for it without having any
Right.
effect on how many bricks they turn out. But
It's
yeah,
just
it's
being
the
Pharaoh's being a
similarity.
jerk.
Yeah, he's being a dick. Lawrence, the similarity that you mentioned with Solomon, and it made me think of Rehoboam and when he lost the more than half of the people, the United Kingdom of Israel and Judah, when he said to his people, they said, hey, make our work lighter. And he said, my father chastised you with whips. I will chastise you with scorpions. You will be my people. I will be your king. It's sort of a Joffrey moment, a very Joffrey type of screw you.
But when Moses goes and asks Pharaoh if they could just have basically a day off to go into the wilderness, that's not a long weekend. That's not unreasonable, right? So the whole point is that God is hardening Pharaoh's heart to be a dick. Is that kind of what's going on?
And it's like get ready, kids. We're all getting a beating for the glory of God.
So it's curious that God doesn't control Moses. He controls Aaron, but he doesn't control Moses, and then he also controls Pharaoh.
I do want to point out one thing. So he, in a way, does control Moses, because if he's being used as a mouthpiece, then Moses will only say what God needs him to say. And in a similar way, Ezekiel takes a vow of silence, or I guess command of silence, and there is he's only supposed to speak when God gives him the information to speak. So he is a conduit for God. So I would say that it is in a different sense, but I would say that there is still the ultimate control is still with God, even with Moses.
Yep. So there is no.
I would say this.
Well,
I would say this story doesn't say that God hardened Pharaoh's heart. It just says that they made a request and he didn't like it.
Right. No,
I
it's
wanted
just
to say
implying.
that I will get to this point when I think it's chapter 7 that talks about the hardening of Pharaohs, because I think that like Maimonides also spoke about this. So
okay.
The scripture does say it. It's just a matter of where it says it and when. And if you're looking at compounded stories tied together, maybe in one of those stories it wasn't God's fault that Pharaoh was a dick. Maybe Pharaoh was just a dick, and then but he has to be sovereign, so retcon God hardened Pharaoh's heart.
So even
he did enslave them in the first place, so we know he's not the nicest person to begin with.
No.
But then towards the
he inherited them.
So towards the end, even the servants are pretty pissed off at Moses, right?
Yeah.
Well, Pharaoh fired all of the programmers so that he left only one engineer, so that when everything went offline, whose fault is it?
Well, and it's running just as well as it ever has, and don't you dare say otherwise.
And Elon Musk did tell them that. He says we're all going to have to, show our devotion here. After he fired so many people, then the remaining people do all the work with half the labor.
Could someone tell me what the word savior is in Hebrew?
Savior?
Yeah, it's translated savior because he made a
May the Lord and judge you. You have made us a stench to Pharaoh and his officials, and have put a sword in their hand to kill us. That's not
the pierce.
That says nothing about savior.
21. Look, and they said unto him, the Lord look upon you and judge, because ye have made our savior to be adored in the eyes of Pharaoh.
Oh no! It says it made us offensive.
It
says it made us offensive in the sight of Pharaoh and his servants, and have put a sword in their hand to kill us.
What are you reading from?
I just want to know King James. I just want to know what that is. I can look it up. I can do it.
Yeah, I don't have savior in my version. No, I have a King James.
I think I've read that the KJV does say, savior. It's not savior. It's the SAVOUR. It doesn't mean
made our savor. Oh, that explains it. I was wondering.
Yeah.
Savor.
Oh, okay, that makes
it's
sense.
spelled different. Okay.
Ye little faith, looking for signs.
Yeah, Tomer went on the commentary on this.
And now we know why there are new religions, for misinterpretations of words.
It's a weird expression.
Well, hold on. I wasn't jumping to conclusions. I was making note of something that didn't make
sense. We're also teasing you.
Yeah,
you know that.
The
Larry
literal words, which
offers $6.66 and says, meanwhile, in the stables, dude, where's my donkey?
Yeah.
Trevor
Set
Wright
up,
says.
Mhm.
Trevor Wright says, P-Town, what attributes best fits the Jewish expectation and understanding of Messiah that is mentioned in the book of the prophets that you would say fits Jesus? And I don't
Where
know
do
what
I
to do with that.
begin?
Yeah.
I feel like that's
But-
an entire
but I
episode.
use
Yeah, that's
Probably.
like a loaded
And
question.
we could maybe do that, but let's wait till we at least get there. Okay, so then Sweet Treat 12311 says, I have a list, not a bucket list, though rhymes with bucket. Uh, but I could die happy meeting up and having a chat with you, fine folk. Well, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Oh.
I was
I'm not
wondering,
particularly
maybe
like that.
chapter 6 includes in the middle like a genealogy. So I don't know if we could read chapter 6 as well. It's my commentary here is like one page.
I
What is-
actually
Sure.
do have to. I do have to get going pretty shortly here. Honestly.
okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. I got a weird day ahead of me. Took off
Okay.
work to deal with some things.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Sure thing.
Yeah, let's
All
save
right.
it
Okay.
for like push it forward.
Yeah, next week.
Mhm.
Yes. Yeah.
May
All
the
right.
force be with you, Lawrence.
All right. Well, thank you everyone for that. I got one more comment. Wander says, in some parts of the story, it says that God hardened Pharaoh's hearts, and in some parts it says that he hardens his heart himself.
Yes. We also
Yeah,
need
that's
to
also
point
true.
that out.
Mhm.
Yeah, we'll get
But
to that.
remember, there are no contradictions in the Bible.
Well,
so
they're
As
different.
long as you ignore all the
So
contradictions.
scientific.
I mean, those
Exactly.
specific ones aren't really contradictions. They're talking about different instances. So
Yes, different types of the plague. Yes.
Okay.
My goodness.
All right. Thank you, everyone.
Bye.